have some interesting old books in my collection, most of them fiction, pulp, and so on, but the occasional non-fiction book, and I have this one, An Outline for Boys and Girls and Their Parents, which is meant to be a kind of home educational book, and it's big on science and big on civilization, and it was published in 1932. 1932 was an interesting year in the UK. Unemployment reached 2.7 million out of a population of 46 million, so that's nearly 6% of the population was unemployed, and that's the overall population. So that would have included children who were too young to work and elderly people who had retired in that 46 million. So of the working population, it was a lot higher. And you have to also bear in mind that the world of work was primarily male at the time. So when you think about it, that is a huge amount of unemployment when it comes to people who could actually be employed. And they just introduced means testing to unemployment benefits. So if you did get unemployed and you had any savings or whatever, you wouldn't automatically receive payments anymore. And people were essentially starving, and there were mass marches, and it was an interesting time, much as our own times are interesting, if not as bad, for different reasons. But it's interesting when you read through this to see the attitudes that are displayed within it, and how attitudes and ideas that we perhaps think of as being antithetical to one another can coexist within the same professed philosophy that's to be found within these pages and considered appropriate to teach children. And a book is views and philosophy kind of calcified, set in amber in time. So I just want to read you one section of this, which I think you'll find interesting because it's about eugenics. And you have to remember this was before World War II and before the Nazis' campaign of mass extermination of the Untermensch made eugenics no longer acceptable as an opinion to hold. And it's just interesting to see this attitude from a British book in the 1930s and to compare it to how attitudes have shifted since, and how liberal ideas and ideas that we view as fascistic coexisted here, even though we consider them to be in opposition to one another. All the hundreds of thousands of kinds of animals have evolved from very simple forms of life, and presumably from inorganic matter originally, without the existence of any mind to plan them. Mind itself is one of the products of evolution, and now, at last, one kind of living thing only has got the ability to control and plan the course of evolution. That one kind of living thing is the humankind. For centuries, men have selected certain types of domestic animals for breeding, and have thus created all the variety of horses and cattle and sheep and pigs and dogs that exist today. They have improved all these animals for the purposes for which they require them, but they have not improved themselves. There is no reason at all to suppose that the inborn mental capacity of a man has increased since prehistoric times. When men were just evolving from ape-like ancestors, they evolved because the best individuals survived and had young ones, while the worst died off and had none. That does not happen in civilization. With us, the weakly are looked after by the strong. If the weakliness is an inherited character, it is unfortunate that people who should have it should have children, because they will pass it on, generation after generation. On the average, the most successful people have the fewest children in most civilized countries today, and the least successful the most. It is possible nowadays for ordinary people to arrange whether they should have many or few children or none at all. It would certainly be better if the most successful people had most children, because success in life is partly due to inherited qualities. Many people with excellent inherited qualities never get an opportunity to show them from lack of a sufficiently good education. If we wanted to improve our race, we should give everyone an equal chance in life as far as possible. We should then encourage the most successful to have a lot of children. Many people are what is called feeble-minded. Their brain never develops beyond that of a child of 6. Often this is a character which is inherited in the same way as blue eyes. If 2 such feeble-minded people marry, all their children will be feeble-minded. If a feeble-minded person marries a normal person, the children will be normal, but some of their descendants will be feeble-minded. It would be a good plan to prevent people who have inherited feeble-mindedness from having children, because feeble-minded people are not happy themselves, and they are not useful to other people, and they cost other people a lot of money. Unfortunately, they are increasing rapidly in numbers in Great Britain. Before long, they will form quite a large proportion of our population, unless we decide not to allow them to have children. Members of Parliament who decide these things think it best to let them go on multiplying. When they were young, members of Parliament did not have an outline for boys and girls and their parents. So you can see that there's an interesting mix of ideas there. The liberal and socialistic idea that everyone should have an equal chance in life, but also this idea that we must eliminate weakness and so on. The evolutionary aspects there at the beginning are accurate, and that was surprising to read in something so old. You might expect a more traditionalist, more religious outlook on society and the world to be found there. But the later aspect on the hereditary of feeble-mindedness isn't necessarily correct. Intelligence is a very complicated thing with a lot of different interacting elements, and it's not as simple as saying a retard will have retards. It doesn't really work like that. But still, I thought it was interesting as an historical artifact. I'm not saying that that's a good way to go about things at all, but it's just interesting to see how that liberal and socialistic idea coexisted alongside something that later became associated with the far right and fascism. And it just goes to show how ideas and philosophies and ideologies are constantly churning, changing, taking things from each other, and coming back together in new and novel forms. Zhang.
In his house in R'lyeh, great Cthulhu lies dreaming, and when he awakens, he shall have the morning wood of aeons. Call of Cthulhu is a deeply pornographic card game. Enjoy your tentacles.